recipe for more stability. So why do we read so many stories about, the market doesn't like instability and this is why Scottish independence is a bad idea? Why is that a constant theme?
Well, it's a constant theme because that's the powers that be want you to hear that, and the press, by and large, puts that message out. The reality, as I mentioned earlier, is business is all about the mix of risk and opportunity, but it's understanding which is which. At the end of the day, stability isn't necessarily the best thing for business. The best thing for business is opportunity. And it's something that's the same as it's always been forever. That position is not credible because everything changes, the environment changes in all kinds of directions, and you need to be able to understand those changes and manage them to mitigate risk and to take the opportunity as it comes up. So to say that things will carry on as they always have done, because that's the way they've always been, is a recipe for disaster from a business perspective.
You always have to react.
You have to react. So to say that we're just going to sit the way it's always been really just doesn't fly.
Yeah, as far as I know, not many people are buying Sony Walkmans anymore.
Exactly. And if that's the business you're in, then tough.
Just from something that's on your declaration, you talk about the ability to trade directly with other nations, even as part of the EU. What immediate benefits can that bring for Scotland, trading directly with other nations, within or without the EU, without having to sort of go through London?
I think the biggest thing there is profile and its brand. I mean, as anybody in business knows, if you've got, especially in a consumer-facing business, if you've got the profile, you've got the brand, that's a big advantage. Scotland, the independence referendum itself, over the period of that, the day or 2 days when the vote happens and when the result is announced, the total value of the amount of money you would have to spend on advertising to buy the amount of worldwide press coverage Scotland's going to get over those 2 days is about $800 million. Okay, so you've got a tremendous advertising budget there, if you like, in global terms. The question is, what do you want to do with that? Do you want to tell Scotland that tell the world that Scotland isn't capable of running its own affairs, or do you want to announce that you're stepping forward into the world as a new player on the world stage? So I think brand and profile are a big part of that will allow Scottish businesses to be seen and heard on the global stage when you go and talk to people about where you're from and where your company's from and what you can do to do business with them.
And there's often a lot of talk about moving to a kind of social democratic Scandinavian model, which is generally more high tax. I think everyone knows it's high tax on a personal level. Do you know much about whether their corporation taxes or business taxes are considerably more or less than what people experience in the United Kingdom?
Yeah, I mean, I've done some business in Finland and I've worked with companies in Norway and Sweden. I don't have the full up-to-date numbers. My understanding is that, frankly, in terms of business taxes, there's probably not that much difference in general. The issue, of course, is who pays the tax. What kind of allowances are there? What you're trying to do with the allowances to direct what direction you want the business and the economy to go in. And in terms of, you talk about the common wheel, Business for Scotland's made an input into that discussion with the Jimmy Reid Foundation. On principle, there's nothing there that we would say we don't agree with. It's a question of working through the details of that. I'm sure not everybody the inputs will have exactly the same view on it, but in general, as a concept, we think it's exactly the direction it should be going in. It's about long-term direction for the economy rather than the short-term reactiveness that you get, as I mentioned earlier, with the financial sector. It's a model that served the Scandinavian countries and Germany very well over the years. It's about having that middle tier of manufacturing or other companies that can support the economy going forward. So I think it's all coherent. I think it all fits together. And the tax issue, as I say, is really about the other side of that's always the support. One of the things we've experienced running business in Scotland is that Scottish enterprise, certainly the kind of businesses I'm involved in, mid-sized manufacturing companies, are very proactive about support and very proactive about what they can do to help you, much more so, frankly, than any of the other countries we've worked in, where you're often left to your own devices. So you've got to look at both sides of that equation and understand the whole picture.
There's another little part of that as well, what you were hinting at there as well, with the social provisions that must be provided by companies are generally Well, let's just say the United Kingdom government is stripping them away one by one, and we're seeing things. There's a big furore this week about zero-hour contracts and workers' rights being stripped away, and people going to work in Poundland for nothing and that kind of thing. Do you think business supports those measures so much in the United Kingdom that, or all around the world, we see the same kind of thing happening in other countries as well? Would a kind of independent, more socially democratic Scotland, would businesses be pushing for those kind of measures here, or do you think they would happily accept a different kind of model?
Well, I mean, it's at the end of the day, if you say to somebody, do you want zero tax, do you want this, do you want that, do you want whatever, do you want a lottery win, do you want whatever, people are going to say, well, yeah, of course. But you've really got to look at the bigger picture. Business reacts to what's in front of it. It'll work with the legislative environment that's there. It'll work with the tax structure that's there. They'll push things to the limit because within the rules, because that's what they do as business and that's what they're obliged to do. It's up to the government to put in as I mentioned, the support, but also the legislative environment, the framework that you want business to operate within. In terms of business deciding where to go, if you look at that from a micro business point of view, if you're working at that level, you're in that economy, you're not going to, if you're an accountant or a hairdresser or whatever, you're not going to up sticks and move to the other side of the world because of a tax environment. You are where you are because that's where you are. And what's important is that the economy is flourishing for those kind of businesses to survive. Businesses, and that applies to retail as well, obviously, they sell to the people that they sell to in the country. If you're talking about manufacturing businesses, then they look across the world, they look at a number of things. Cost base is one of them. The tax environment is one of them. Where the market is another one. Where the skills are is a very, very important one. Where the government support is another one. So there's a whole range of issues. And if you ask one of those questions about tax or legislation in isolation, you'll get an answer from business. Obviously you will. But at the end of the day, business looks at all of these things together when it makes its decisions about where to locate and where to do business.
Yeah, I mean, whenever there's another crisis, you don't see massive amount of capital flight coming from some of the Scandinavian countries and Germany, the examples that you mentioned. There's a more kind of stable system there, and in fact, those countries seem to be shielded from it in some ways.
Absolutely, and I think that's a mixture of the culture, the way the government support business, and the long-term perspective they've got on where they're trying to get to. And also the partnership. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're going to do business in a country, it's a Henry Ford thing. Nobody buys cars if nobody's got any money. So he doubled the wages of the workers and everybody went and bought his cars. So at the end of the day, if you're in a high-wage economy, yeah, it makes things more difficult from competing against other countries. But what it also does is generates a market there that supports the economy and business as a whole.
Okay, so we'll finish up on the business section of this discussion with a more controversial question. Who would stand to lose money from the breakup of the United Kingdom?
I think there's only one group of people that would certainly lose on day one, and that's the current parliamentary representation that Scotland's got at Westminster. There's a lot of people there that have done very, very nicely. They've got a job for life, and they'll move on to the House of Lords perhaps at some stage in the future, and they'll get very nice expense accounts. One thing about business people is that we're always very sceptical about politicians, and the thing that I say to business people that I've got doubts about independence is, well, at the end of the day, if you've got two sets of politicians each doing half a job, then as we say in business, that's an opportunity to get rid of the expensive ones. So if you've got MSPs and MPs, then clearly there's one lot's got to go from a business point of view, and that often forces people to review their take on the independence debate.
Very interesting point. Okay, and if we could just come to you personally, it's the question that I always ask on the podcast. Is independence something that was always something you were after, or was it after seeing certain figures, or was there a particular moment or a particular conversation? What was it that attracted you to the idea in the first place?
I mean, yeah, I've never been involved with the SNP, and I'm still not a member of any party, and frankly, I've voted for a number of parties over the year. And it's not really been a burning issue for me. I would say over the last 20 or 30 years, it's been something that's been in the background. I think what's happened now is that the current political environment in Scotland obviously has brought that to the fore in the last few years and forced people like myself to think about it. So I was never pro or anti in a violent or extreme kind of way. It wasn't a hugely burning issue for me. But what's happened really is I've sat down over the last year or so and looked at it with an open mind, starting, it has to be said, with some scepticism about the economy, about size, and about some of the other issues that I think most people start with. And it was really through the course of last year looking at the numbers and understanding those that really got me to say, wow, this is my business point of view, a tremendous opportunity. And then the more you get into it, every time somebody brings up an issue and you look at it and try and understand, somebody presents something as a case for the union, then you have a look at it in a bit more detail and you start to realise that there's an awful lot of emperor's new clothes type scenarios there. There's a lot of things we're told are better because we're in the union. But when you actually look at the facts, it's really, really built on sand. And a number of industrialisation opportunities I mentioned earlier are things that really, through talking to people and through doing a bit of background reading on it, you start to realise that there's tremendous opportunity there.
And going forward with the organisation, do you think that you're going to have ever-increasing numbers? You're saying it's increasing at the moment, and things seem to be at the moment just switching towards yes. Do you think that the business community is coming around in general? How are the polls at the moment? How are the polls with businesses?
Well, I mean, there was an interesting poll came out a few weeks back now, which said that a majority of small businesses in Scotland were in support of independence, and that's just one poll. But I think I've got to believe that there will be there is a move, and there will be more of a move. And there's a number of aspects to that. At the end of the day, part of the issue with the business community is that it's a bit schizophrenic. If you talk to people about, in terms of this issue, because people are really wearing two hats at least, if you talk to somebody about from a purely business opportunity point of view and the economics of it, and especially if you've got something in their sector that gets them excited about the opportunities for business for business in an independent Scotland, then they can completely understand it and buy it. The situation, of course, though, is that there's a high correlation, no surprise, between business people and Conservative voters. So what you've got is people who are business people but also Conservatives and have got a soft spot for the union from an emotional point of view. And I think that really clouds the debate. And what I always say to people is, we'll divorce those two realities. You may be a lifelong Conservative, you may have a soft spot for the union, but you've got to admit from a business point of view, independence, looking at the numbers, looking at the facts, looking at the opportunities, makes an awful lot more sense. And then if people continue to say, well, do you know what, I get that, but the union's emotionally too important for me, then that's fine. But I think people in general need to be able to separate out those two ways of looking at the situation and treat the business as a business concept and not as some offshoot of a Conservative Party philosophy.
So you're suggesting that basically the yes side have got the facts on their side?
Oh, without a doubt. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And as I say, one of the things in terms of developing business in Scotland, we see it going from strength to strength. And every week, every month now, we're getting more of the organisation in place. The next step is to set up local groups. So we've now got groups in Glasgow, Edinburgh, Perth and Fife up and running. And we've got about another dozen groups that we want to get set up throughout the country over the next 2 or 3 months. And the concept is there that will be local business people organising monthly events where the pro-business community can gather to discuss the issues and how things are going, but also an open forum for undecided people to come along and hear the arguments and have a discussion. And we'll be doing presentations on the economics of independence, business case for independence, all of those events going forward. We're very keen to work with local yes groups in terms of rolling out the local Business for Scotland groups. We're making overtures already to local chambers of commerce where we want to have the opportunity to present to their members and have debates with anyone from the No campaign that wants to take part on the business case for independence.
Have any of the No campaign taken you up on that yet?
We've had a couple of debates where things have been organised, but it's been politicians rather than business people. So we don't really see a big organised business presence for the union. I think what's there is in terms of the poll results, it's soft. It's not coherent in terms of people have got an instinctive reaction because of where their politics are rather than where their business is. So we don't really see it, and it'll be very interesting to see what kind of happens as we start to roll out, whether there's any pushback from the no